Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to part 2 of our do-over of the second scenario in the Crossing the Andes DLC called Coffee Barons. And in part 1, we got a couple of tough, rapid tasks out of the way, and now we're growing our building wealth, and we're doing that by first shipping 1,000 units of freight, which we've already accomplished, and the thing we're working on now is getting our quarterly freight revenue up to $1 million in profit. That's a lot of freight, but we are doing a great job getting there because we're following the basic principles that work, which are have dedicated lines that run point to point without a lot of merging and a lot of complex junctions, and making sure that your trains can start and run till they get where they want to go without stopping, without delays, and that's what we're focusing on here. And so we're really going back old school and playing it kind of the way I played it months ago when first started doing these videos. And again, we've made great progress so far. So we've just been occasionally adding cities, but mostly just adding in the essential elements, cattle and corn and logs and fish to the cities as we go along, and looking for opportunities to run more and more freight. So now we've actually gone ahead, skipped ahead about 6 months, I think, from where we left off on part 1, because it was just more and more and more of the same. And now we've got a log line running to Contage, and we want to also run it down to Uberaba. So that's what we're doing now, is expanding the station so it'll have 2 platforms. Remember, you want as many platforms as you want the same number of platforms at your rural station as you have cities that you're serving out there in the field, or in other words, your destinations. So make your platforms equal your destinations so that you don't end up with a queue where a train is sitting on your only track and it needs to go to City A, but City A doesn't need logs, but the train that goes to City B, which could take logs, is sitting there waiting on the train going to City A, which is going nowhere. You don't want that, so that's why we do the multiple platforms. So we've got our Platform 2 now dedicated to Uberaba, and see how it took off in the one on Platform 1, which was for Contage, is still just sitting there because they have enough logs right at this moment. So there we got that going. Now on our research, as I said in last episode, you need to kind of scroll back for some of these. There's some good ones in here, good reliability and stuff. They cost you 300. They're expensive, 300 research points, but they're worth it. I got that cattle car, which gave us 5% freight increase. We're trying to build freight revenue, so that just makes sense. Anything you can do to build your revenue or reliability. I really like the reliability ones for your trains, so they don't break down so much. So again, we're taking opportunities to grow cities, and we'll throw in industries when we can, but mostly we're just really going after grabbing freight that's out there and running it into these cities. Now we see here that Contage has grown, but it's just gone through the 20,000. So that's just more of an information thing, because at 20,000 you don't get any extra business. Right? 40,000 is the next milestone we want to see hit at that city, so we can put an industry in there potentially. So you can see we're over 800,000 now at this point. It's October of 1903. And we want to do everything we can to try to get to that million as quickly as possible. So we're going to just keep looking for opportunities to kind of low-hanging fruit, freight runs that we can put in that'll have decent demand and will stay busy, and go ahead and deal with that. Now, the thing we see here that is not pretty is that an industry went in in well, and quickly we're taking a look to see, can we buy that coffee. I'd love to own that coffee plantation. Remember, this is the coffee barons one. We do own the one over near Curitiba, but that one was too expensive. So now we're going to set up a run and just go ahead and ship the coffee in. If we can't buy it, we can at least make money shipping it. And remember, the coffee is not just needed by those special coastal cities. It's needed by, you know, every city eventually after it grows to a certain size needs the coffee. So we've got Sao Paulo has grown now. It's a level 4 city, so it'd be a good time for us to start shipping that coffee. It's been getting coffee overland. We might as well get paid for shipping. And besides that, we're looking for any low-hanging fruit, if you will, that we can plug into our line and get more freight revenue. And these short runs are great for the freight revenue, so this is a beauty. So we'll pick up the coffee, ship it into Sao Paulo, and you notice that we gave it a dedicated line to run into. And here's an opportunity to put a supply tower down there. We need one for that short run. Might as well put it out there where anyone coming down through there can use it. Besides that, I think they look cool when there's big wide ones. All right, so there's our setup for our coffee running into Sao Paulo. There's a little more revenue we'll get. And this is a case where if we could afford to buy it, if we had a little more funds. Now, and I say that like there's something wrong with our economy. Quite the contrary. Our economy's doing well. We're making money. But I'm also trying to be diligent and spend it as fast as I can. You can't. It's not making you any money sitting there collecting. We want to spend this money and be running more lines. So what we're going to do now is run a line out to Rio de Janeiro. It's high time we got Rio de Janeiro hooked up into our system. So here, first thing to notice is another dedicated line for this connection. The second thing to notice is that when you have, I've mentioned this before, when you have several dedicated lines running out, double lines running out of each of the platforms, if you've been running your connections down pretty close to the platforms, it gets kind of wide to the point where sometimes that third one is hard to use. So here's a case where we can't connect to the third one unless we want to just shoot off to the side. So I decided I'd rather be able to catch that supply tower and not have to build another one, and go ahead and use number 4. Now, and of course, number 3 would be available out the other end if we needed it for something. That would be one option. And if we really, truly needed to use number 3 platform on that station, we could go in and clean up that track a little bit, run some of those connections back a little bit further away from the station to give more room right there at the sockets, if you will, and that would give you room to put all 4 of your direct, your point-to-point connections into the station. But no matter, we're setting up a direct line from Rio to Sao Paulo, and that's going to give us another good city-to-city beer meat line, and is going to, again, help us with our, again, as I said in the last video, I'm thinking of this as a freight line because there's going to be plenty of freight hauled on this line, and it's going to help the cities grow, which is going to cause more freight from other lines to be hauled. and there is an Attican superhighway of track. It's a beautiful sight. Oh, and by the way, as a quick aside, my wife and I had the opportunity to take vacation in the southwest U.S. Here recently, and we're driving along the highway and we see signs for Raton, New Mexico. And if you'll remember, that's in Railway Empire. And in fact, if you've seen the videos I did on those maps, I didn't even know the place existed. So I thought, hey, we got to see this. So we went into Raton, New Mexico, and we went down to the railroad station. And sure enough, in that railroad station was a super highway of track right there running through it. Here's a picture that I took of it. You can see all those tracks. There are two very clear sets of tracks. Over higher to the left there, I think there's the reason that looks so thick, there's a bunch of switches in there. But I think there's at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 sets of tracks over there. So that's as close as I've come to seeing a super highway of tracks. So I thought that was pretty cool. And while we were there, we went into this little shop next to the track, and there was a little old man there who was kind of manning the shop, and he was a native of Raton. And he was a very friendly little fella, and we started talking, and he told us the story of how Raton got its name. It turns out that the cavalry had hired some Mexican boys to take care of their horses whenever they made camp at night. And they had settled down for the evening in that area right there where Raton is now. And the boys are getting ready to go to bed, and everybody's settling down for the night, and all of a sudden they hear this screaming, "Raton, Raton!" And the boys were screaming, "Rat, rat!" Some giant, huge field rats or mice, field rats, had come in and were chewing on the boys' boots. So that's how Raton, New Mexico got its name, from these boys screaming, "Raton, Raton!" Okay, now let's get back to the game. You notice there, took out a bond and bought out a publishing industry in Curitiba and immediately demolished it and replaced it with a tailor. And why did I do that? Because the tailor product is needed by cities much earlier than the publishing. And it was going to be difficult to try to get paper coming to Curitiba to fulfill the needs of that publishing shop. The computer tends to put some of the worst choices of industries in these cities. If you don't catch the growth and aren't able to fill the slot yourself, the computer will go ahead and put something in there and make it a private ownership, and they're almost always things that just cannot be supplied. So in this case, we don't want to stop the growth in Curitiba, but we also don't want to miss the opportunity to have Curitiba make the clothing and ship it off to Sao Paulo and down to Porto Alegre and help both those cities grow. Plus, there's more shipping as we ship the tailored goods, and more shipping as we ship this llama wool down to Curitiba. So again, we're building up our freight revenue, and we're also allowing our city growth to continue and to improve, actually. So that's one of the key things when you are growing cities. Not only do you have to supply the raw materials and run your city-to-city line so that you can get goods moving back and forth between the cities, but you also have to make sure that you have the right industries. And I would strongly recommend that you try to focus on those very early industries that produce goods that are used as soon as possible. Now, the industry set for this map, for this DLC, is actually a little clumsy. A lot of wood-based stuff, so wood is very important. You have furniture and paper that you make, and then, of course, the paper is used to make for the publishing, to make what I assume would be like newspapers or books or whatever. And so all that starts with logs. So logs are a big deal on this in this map. You can't do anything with the fish except eat them. You can't do anything with the llama output except make the clothes in a tailor. That's all it's good for. So logs are big. You really want to make sure you have strong logging, and you want to build industries based around that so that you can make sure that you, again, have industries that are going to help everybody grow, including that city, and have industries that you can supply. That's the big thing. And we sent a spy out to get us some more technology, and that worked. So that's a lovely thing. And we are, again, trying to tackle that $1 million quarterly revenue. And we're not going to quite make it. Sad to say, because here comes the end of March. That's the end of a quarter, and we don't get any congratulations. So we didn't quite make it. We got to be we're right on the edge, and so we're going to have to wait one more quarter. That's a shame. And when I said we didn't quite make it, I meant it. We were at 982,000 against a goal of 1 million. Oh man, we needed one train anywhere to hit and unload. One more train, and we would have made it. Oh, that's frustrating. But it is what it is. We did our best. And we're still in there. I mean, we've got till the end of 1904 to do this. Just wanted to, of course, get it done as early as possible. So here we're going to set up fish to be delivered to multiple cities. So we're going to run fish over here to Contaget, and we're going to run fish. Well, let's see. I'm trying to remember where all we sent it. I believe we sent it up to Porto Seguro and down to Rio and Contaget, and also to Uberaba, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, this is going to be a fish line that goes in, and again, we are doing dedicated lines. We're checking the traffic. Now here, we're using that same line that the logs are coming in from the north because it's not overly crowded, so there won't be any problem with the trains coming from either direction. You can see it's not super busy there, so we won't have congestion. So we're going to not use a different platform. We'll make use of the one we already have in use. And again, if you missed that before, that's the big thing I'm doing here is checking the use of the platform and making sure it's barely used or not at all before I run a line into it. And if I find one that's even remotely busy, like even over 50%, then we fire up a new platform and run a dedicated line. So I'm going to fast forward through this. This is just kind of more basic build. Although here I do have to build the little junction because now I'm not using the point-to-point. I wanted to have all 4 lines easily accessible because I knew I wanted to run to 4 cities. Same thing here. Check the utilization in Rio, and it's not, that particular track is not overburdened, so we're going to run our fish down there into that platform. So we'll finish off the fish lines to our cities, and that's just kind of more track building. So let's kind of skip ahead a little bit.
Did I promise too much? I would approve the idea of more people living in the interior of the country. I give them jobs in my businesses, and we are able to create whole new metropolises out of nothing. Fantastic, right? I know. Please take care about it in the near future. Only a few years ago, this place was nothing but a couple of shacks and a dirt road. And now, ha!
I think he's done. So while we were setting up our line, we accomplished our $1 million freight. So now we've got 3 new tasks, and we've already finished one of them. We have 15 highly profitable lines. That's not a very hard one, the way we like to play. So we now have to build Curitiba up to 80,000. Well, you know, the way we've approached this, we've kind of been set up for that. It was just naturally fell into place when you looked at the task and how we had to go down to the south. So there, that one got done almost immediately. And now we've got that last one, which is a little tougher. This is heavy city building mode. We have to connect to 8 cities of population of 60,000 or more. Of course, Curitiba is already there. I think Sao Paulo's already there. I'm not sure exactly how many we've got right now, but we've got a really good infrastructure for city building, obviously. And we've got this promoter coming up. So now, this is a new character, the promoter, with this DLC. He or she can advertise for his particular city and will bring a lot of new citizens into the city, even if the city isn't at 60% growth rate. And if it is 60%, you get even more. So he's going to accelerate our growth. So I'm trying to find I'm struggling with these names. I'm having so much trouble with them here. I can't remember the name of the city, and I can't remember to tell you what it is. Uberaba, that's it, Uberaba. I want to keep forgetting to put that B in there. Uberaba. So I want to hire this dude and say, hey man, go out there and talk up Uberaba and let's get it growing, because it is kind of stagnant right now. So he might as well use him. I wish you could hire these guys, put them on retainer, and use them later, but you can't. They go away after a while. So you got to grab them while you can. So we've got 80,000 in Curitiba, so we're great. Sao Paulo just looks huge, so it's fine. We need to grow. We've got Rio is growing. Contagem is growing. We've got Uberaba is growing, even though it doesn't show it, because our promoter is doing his thing and getting people to come there, give us a little head start. And so that's and then Porto Alegre, I think, is doing pretty well too. We'll have to go down and check on that one. But if it's doing well, then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Uberaba makes 6. So that would give us 6 of our cities if we can keep them growing, and we'll need to get 2 more. So remember city growth when you're talking about 60,000. You're talking about those 6 key things. Meat, beer, or in this case, chicha. And then whatever those fundamental raw materials are that they need based on the scenario or the map. So in this case, it's corn and logs and fish. Corn, logs, fish, meat, beer, and then cattle if you happen to be a meat producer. So if you can get those going, you're in really good shape. And then typically maybe you may have to dump at least, one more thing in there to kind of push them over the edge, keep them over that 60% threshold, and keep them growing. But the thing to do is to really focus on those first 6. Get those 6 right, and you will not have problems growing your cities. And this is, again, where I would strongly recommend these dedicated lines. Don't let yourself get into this mode where you're trying to do too fancy a line and crowd it up too much, because if you start getting, let's just say we had, one of those lines like that, and then we have a breakdown on the way down, and then we have a train that's getting maintained in the station or whatever, and all that stuff we need to keep the growth is sitting just outside the city, but it's not quite there. Well, you're going to start losing. You're losing ground and you're losing time. Remember, time is the most critical resource. So what we want are these clean lines that keep that stuff moving in there. And even if it means you have to do something that looks kind of silly like this and build a line right across the way like that when you could have hooked it into another line and built a bypass and all that crap, forget it. Just go straight where you want to go and get the job done. So there I just cleaned up. I inadvertently put a bridge in there. I did not mean to, so I actually deleted that section of track and redid it. And you see where I put it back together, it's not quite cleanly put together, so it didn't want to even let me put the towers on there. And now I see I can't connect, so there's got to be something wrong with that line. There's a disconnect somewhere. And this one took a little searching to find. In fact, right this minute, I can't recall exactly what the problem was. So let's just watch it and see what it turns out to be. If we come out of track 2 in Uberaba, where can we go? Well, we can't go to the corn, that's for sure. But it looks fine here. And what I finally decided to do, I just couldn't find it. I didn't want to waste a ton of time looking. There's probably one little disconnect somewhere that keeps it there, right there. Probably that could have been it. You see that little gap there? That looked funny. But whatever it was, the good news is if you hit the delete key, you get most of your money back if it's new track. And what we'll do is run it up here and run it just past that supply tower. So we pick that up. And it actually turns out, this actually turned out to be a better line. It was a straighter, cleaner shot with less hills and no issues whatsoever. So that was beautiful. That worked out great. So now we'll double track it back, have our dedicated line to run corn into Uberaba and help it to continue to grow. I think as a rule, if you have one you're just scratching your head, I wouldn't spend all day looking for it unless you just love to solve puzzles and you think that take it on as a challenge. I think I would hit the delete key and start over, because sometimes you just have something that's just a little off, and you could tell when we were trying to place the towers on that there was a section of track that wouldn't even let the towers go on, which means the track wasn't side by side, kind of snapped together. So maybe that was it. Who knows? But problem solved with the good old delete key, the bulldozer, and we are good to go to run corn into Uberaba. Now, that was a good example of when I'm running these lines and I want to know how many trains to run. I usually try to get the average time that a train's will get in there under 50 days. So when I see a line that say 67 days, I'm going to run 2 trains, and that'll make my average under the 67, under the 50. And what I very often do will put the 2 that I need and 1 to grow on. So I would run 3 trains. I'm not afraid of running a lot of trains, and that's also another advantage of having these dedicated lines. You can get away with running an extra train in there. It may be overkill, but it won't kill you. Whereas running too many trains in a really complex system with a lot of mergers and a lot of routes coming together, a lot of trains will kill you. It will bog you down and actually stunt your growth. So another advantage to the dedicated lines. All right, so now here's the other thing we're going to do. We're going to go over and hook in so that we can run fish into Uberaba. And rather than running it, around the city through that mess over there at the city, we're just going to go over here and hook into the corn line that we just set up, and that'll give us a free path in there to run fish. And because that'll only make 2 lines running into that platform, I can't recall, but I think we'll just use the exact same platform, because it won't be too busy. It'll only have 2 items running in there, the corn and the fish. And here's one of those cases where you connect it to the first track because that's the only one it'll let you do. Then after you've placed it, you can go back, delete that connection, and then connect it to the outer track, and then finish off your little connection as if you were doing the whole line. So there we go. Now we've got a nice little crossover. When you do these double crossovers like this, and I'll get into a bigger one later on where I cross over a bunch of stuff. It's a bit of a classic. And but the thing I wanted to say was, if like in that case where it's crossing over one line, you have to set your signals on both sides, because it kind of treats that as 2 different sections. It will pick up the directional. So once you set one side of that to be, drive on the right, it will pick that up, but it won't set more signals the rest of the way. You have to go over there and do your signal thing again on the other side to get it all the way through. Notice too, we're still running the same little Kitsy Meyer, whatever the heck, I don't know what they're called. The first train we get, we're still running that same train. We have improved it a bit with our research, but we're still running the same one. Now, why is that? Because it just can't afford not to. Just don't have the money to do a bunch of swapping out of trains, and this thing's performing just fine. We will eventually upgrade, and it will help our performance, but right now it's more important to have the connections and the trains running than to have some super train running. So this is interesting. I've set up fish going to 4 cities, yet this fishing village doesn't seem to want to level up. And I'm not sure I understand it, but it doesn't want to. So I said, fine, I'll buy it. So now I'm going to buy the fishing village and expand it. It's expensive, but it's worth doing. Well, first of all, we'll start making profit off the fish. You see, we're already making $5,000 a week in profit. And it'll go up. We'll make more once we expand it. We've got plenty of markets for it, so we'll keep selling it. There we go. Now I didn't catch it, but I think we've got a couple that are big, just like we thought, Curitiba and Sao Paulo. And we got lots of other ones growing, so that's a good sign. And so what we're going to do down in this section is just keep firing out stuff. Like here's the sugar. Would like to buy that, but it's pretty expensive too. And again, we've been playing for a while, and that sugar is going overland to some of the cities. Therefore, it's making some profit for its private owner, and that drives the price of it up. Buy these things as soon as you can, or the ones that are way out in the distance. They're always cheap. They're great deals. And you know you're going to run railroads and make them into profit-making machines. All right, so at this point we have finished off 2 of our 3 next set, our set of 3 tasks that have been assigned to us now, this new set. We've grown Curitiba because that was natural. When I said it was natural, what I meant was it's sitting there next to that coffee. So as soon as we took that tactic of buying that coffee and making sure we were pumping coffee into Curitiba and then on down to Porto Alegre, we were satisfying a great deal of Curitiba's demand with that coffee. And then on top of that, we had the city-to-city lines. We had two city-to-city lines. The one with Sao Paulo was really helping because that's a beer meat line. And so we were getting good satisfaction there. We had fish that we were pumping in. We had corn that we brought in. We had logs that we brought in. And then later, we swapped out that industry so that we could bring in llama wool and have that clothing industry, and that gave us a whole bunch more demand satisfaction. So it was easy to Curitiba to 80 was actually easy because of where it's positioned on the map. Now, and the way it relates to the tasks that we had to do. And Sao Paulo, the same thing. We had that beer meat line running a long time. We gave it logs and fish, and we gave it corn, and it grew very nicely. We have others that are set up now. We have beer meat lines running from Uberaba to Contagem. We have a beer meat line running from Sao Paulo to Rio de Janeiro, and we are pumping in, as you can see here, we're putting in fish and sugar and logs and corn and all that good stuff. And so we're making sure that these cities grow. So let's stop right here. And our goal right now is to build 8 cities to a population of 80,000. And we've got 5 growing. We've got Uberaba growing because of the promoter, and it'll continue to grow because we're starting to really pump stuff into it. And we'll pick 2 more cities next episode to grow. And I'll show you, a different technique. You'll notice how many warehouses I've used so far. 0. Quick comment on that. I think some people think I'm the warehouse guy because I did that, big series on warehouses, but I don't use them in my play very much, especially when I'm on a time constraint because they cost a lot of money and they're hard to set up early. Now, make note of that, early. Once you get in a position where your money's rolling in pretty well, then you can kind of stop the clock for a second, do some building, put in a warehouse, and have a nice, really organized build. And that's what we're going to see in the next video, a way to use warehouses to do your city building. So, so hopefully you enjoyed this one and got something out of it, and you'll join us for our next one. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.